Alright, for this video I'm going to talk about Rainbow Six Siege, which is currently in closed beta that's been extended for a short period of time. I've been playing it off and on for maybe 5 or 6 days from the technical test into the closed beta, which has added some stuff and patched some stuff over time. Just want to talk about the design, some of the interesting parts of what they've done with the game while it's still in beta, and kind of share that for those of you, especially that didn't get into the beta, and get a chance to play it. So first off, kind of an overview of the modes that are available at the moment. There will be a lot more supposedly coming out in the full release, so this is just about supposedly 1/3 of the game content that I could take a look at here and talk about. So keep in mind there may be some more stuff coming, but there's only a couple months left to do some polish changes, so I don't think a whole lot will change in terms of the basic mechanics between now and then. So there's two basic modes that exist. Technically both of them offer multiplayer options, but only one of them offers a single player option. Right now there is multiplayer with two modes, which is the Team Deathmatch Bomb, in which there are 2 bomb locations, and it is similar to Counter-Strike's Defuse mode. And there's Team Deathmatch Secure Area, which is more like a capture the point, kind of where you have to hold the point for a certain period of time without any opposition in it. There's also the Terrorist Hunt mode, which is a cooperative mode. The other ones are just, like I said, Team Deathmatch. And so this is Terrorist Hunt, which is like a callback to previous Rainbow Six games, and a co-op, kill the AI sort of thing. In this case, you can play with up to 4 other people on your team, because this is about 5-person teams. And you could do it with either matchmaking to help you find people, or do it via lone wolf, and just play by yourself, which is, of course, much harder. So right now it's a little difficult to learn the game without, I guess, playing a little bit of single player or doing the tutorials, which are not the greatest, as this could be, as with any team game like MOBAs and things like that, joining into a game in which you depend entirely on your team can make it a very stressful, difficult thing to learn, because you get people mad at you or yelling at you, or you feel like you let your team down because you just really don't know what you're doing yet. They do have some tutorials available which reward you with what's called Renown, which is the soft currency of the game. So first off, they have one showing you how to deploy barricades, which is just a video. These are non-interactive tutorials, which is kind of an interesting choice in not letting you really try stuff out. This may change, I assume, for the full release, but I guess this is a way for them to make sure you see how to do it correctly. So they show you how to do the barricades, how to deal with floors, which is similar to the barricade situation, and walls. So I think this kind of accentuates the core mechanic of dealing with penetration. Next we'll take a look at the operators available in the game. So the game is set up in a sort of class-based system. The way it's set up is it is similar to something like Counter-Strike, where you have terrorists and counter-terrorists, except for this has very specific classes that you can play that are exclusive to one player each. Like you can't both have, or your team can't have 2 of the same class selected. So the way it's divided, instead of counter-terrorists and terrorists, which is still basically the same thing, but it's labeled as attackers and defenders, which is obviously a little more clear. You start the game, you have none available except for the basic recruit class, which is like a generic all-around class that doesn't have any special abilities or anything, but does have maybe more options for basic setup than some of the other ones. And then you unlock new operators using the soft currency of Renown that you get through playing. You also have a sort of XP that levels you up, but that isn't necessarily directly correlated to the Renown system. So it's a little different in that. On the unlock operator, I have most of them unlocked, so these are the only ones that I have left, so it only shows you pretty much what you have left to unlock. The way it's set up is when you go in, there's an unlock cost that you can use to unlock a specific operator, and the more you unlock, the more it costs. As a way to kind of keep you from unlocking all of them super fast, it tries to slow you down a little bit, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It tries to give you a chance to be a little more experienced before you have too many options. And some of these I think cost a little more starting than others, which makes it so that you have to have a little more experience before you can unlock classes of that specific group. You see they're organized by group, in this case GSG9, which just gives a little thematic feel to the different groups. They're not all as full of operators, which there supposedly will be more operators available on the full release, although there's a decent amount right now with I think around 8 each. So around 16. And you see when you mouse over one of the operators, you can see the different abilities of it. So the way the operators are defined is kind of interesting in that they are given a specific armor class, light, medium, or heavy, and a speed, like slow, medium, or fast. It's the general balance of armor versus speed for the most part. So, if you light armor is fast speed, medium and medium, slow and heavy, that sort of thing, which correlates pretty well together. I'm not sure if that even needs to be two separate things, because they're pretty much the same kind of concept, that if you're heavy, you're slow. The way it's set up in terms of the class weaponry is there is a gadget of some sort that this class has. Their special ability, so to speak. In this case, his Jaeger's or Jagger, however you pronounce it, is active defense. The way that works is kind of interesting in that it is a defensive mount on a wall that will essentially stop grenades in midair, like fizzle them out, so that you can stop someone from penetrating a room. So it makes for an interesting way to kind of defend a room from being just grenade spammed, which is kind of a common complaint in a lot of these games. Although, to be fair, I don't see this class being used all that often, as some of the other classes could be a little more useful. And unfortunately, with a 5-man team, you're kind of limited on having only 5 classes. So if some are better than others, you do end up with situations where it could be a bit off balance compared to, say, something like Team Fortress 2, where there's generally going to be more players per team than there are available classes, meaning most classes get used. Although you can still have some imbalances with that. Next is the primary weapons, which vary per unit. I'm not sure exactly why some of them have specific kinds of weapons versus others, as a lot of the weapons can be very similar. Some of them are just kind of minor tweaks, and some of them are big differences in terms of being a shotgun versus a machine gun versus a big, giant heavy machine gun, or even a shield and pistol. So this is the 2 weapon choices for this guy. There's generally 2 weapon choices, and there are some customization options that you can unlock, which I'll show in a bit. There's also the secondary weapon, which is usually a pistol of some kind, although there are some submachine gun options like Uzis. And then last is the gadget choice. Now keep in mind, each of these you only get to choose one. So you get to choose 1 primary weapon, 1 secondary, and 1 gadget. So you can see, let's see if any of these have 2 secondary weapons. No. So you could choose a gadget. In this case, there is a deployable shield. That is a shield you can put on the ground that will come up to about crouching height, and it can be collapsed again and moved somewhere else. And then barbed wire, which is permanent emplacement, but will slow down a drone or attacker. It's a good way to kind of slow entry, although this is really probably one of the least useful, in my opinion, gadgets in the game, sadly. And so that's the basic gist of how a unit is set up, or an operator is set up. One of the things I think is pretty interesting about how the game is set up is this is basically based around the core mechanic of walls and floors and their surfaces, windows, things like that, in terms of penetrating them. Because it's designed around the idea of a siege, the defenders are basically sieged up in a building and are taking advantage of both booby traps and different surfaces to protect themselves. This becomes kind of the core mechanic, which a lot of the gadgets are based around, which I think is a pretty neat way of approaching it. It doesn't always blend well, and I'll kind of go over some of the operators here so you can get an idea of how the different ways they've sort of played on that mechanic. So the first is one of the most direct, which is the ability to just literally sledgehammer through surfaces, which works for both walls and floors, certain floors that are trapdoors, for example. And the ability to breach through a lot of walls very easily can be really nice. I mean, generally you can get through a lot of them through other means, but just being able to do that indefinitely is a pretty useful skill. Next is this thermite exothermic charge. The idea is defenders can reinforce their walls and basically create a steel surface which is not able to be gotten through by the sledge, for example. So the thermite then allows you to basically get through that steel surface. So it creates a sort of charge that is able to put a hole in a steel surface. So it's a counter to the ability to reinforce walls. Next is the twitch one, which is interesting because the drones are generally used for reconnaissance in this game. They're an ability to scout around and find where the enemy is or the objective is. And this one adds a slight feature in giving you the ability to shock the enemy, which is only minorly effective, but it does add as a nice distraction during a breach or coordinated assault. So it is not the most interesting of all the mechanic twists, but it is kind of nice to have a good variety one here that puts a twist on the idea of the drone, And I think it'd be good if they have some more operators that are able to put another twist on a drone, like let's say an exploding one, or one that's able to do like an EMP or something that makes it a little more interesting to use the drones in a variety of ways, especially since the drones could be shot and killed, giving the defenders a way to counter that. Next is the ability to use a extendable shield. Now there's quite a few of the classes that either have a shield as their gadget, or their special ability, or they have a shield that they could be used as the primary weapon along with a pistol. This is the guy that fully uses the shield and makes it extendable, allowing him to basically kind of charge in and not even be shot in the legs. This provides protection for yourself as well as your teammates, so it could be used in kind of a coordinated assault. And I think the idea of the shields being used portably is also a good play on the core mechanic of having penetratable surfaces. So the shields are surfaces that are not really penetratable, but portable, but also only work on a single facing and allow yourself to be flanked and killed in those ways, or killed with explosive things like that. So it's a nice continuation of that idea of breaching and penetration. Next is an actual breach charge variation. So normally there's breach charges as a general tool that you could get or gadget for many of the units or the operators. But this one is a special one that when you put it on a surface, you can actually have it essentially spawn grenades on the other side of the wall. So it's just releasing them into the other side, allowing you to clear a room through the surface rather than trying to, like say, spam a grenade through a window, which is definitely an interesting variation on breaching through with an explosive while destroying the surface. In this case, it doesn't destroy the surface. And next, another attack shield variation, in which the shield actually flashes your opponent like a flashbang. So rather than covering your legs, it helps you come in on the opponent by being able to stun them temporarily, so then you can actually just continue to charge in. It only works very single direction, which, much like the other shields, continues that idea of being able to work a single direction and still be flanked and things like that. So it requires coordination. I think is a good play on something like the flashbang, but also combining it with the theme of a single-sided penetration barrier. Next is the defenders, which the defenders are, rather than set up around shields and breaches, are set up around traps and defensive mechanisms. So in this case, this character is able to detonate remote toxic gas charges that basically fill a room with toxic gas. That provides a way to kind of provide a choke point or kind of stop an advancing breach. It does damage to the attacker coming in, but it doesn't necessarily kill them because they're able to usually get out of it pretty easily. So X is more of a deterrent and allows you to kind of control the attack, which is good as a variation on the different kinds of grenades that are available in the game. There's generally smoke, stun, and frag grenades, which are standard military grenades. This provides a nice variation on that that's only available to one class. Next is a really interesting class in terms of countering the surveillance and gadget abilities of the other team, which is to place signal disruptors on the ground. Now you get like 4 of these, I believe, that you could place on various choke points to stop the drones that start the round from actually being able to get into your area and see what's going on. It requires you to, at the very start of a match, actually start placing these very quickly and very strategically to prevent the drones from getting in, because once they get in, there's not much you could do other than shoot them. But this provides a way to create a barrier, like an electronic barrier that drones can't get past, because once they drive within the signal radius close enough, they're just shut down and unable to be recovered. Unless, I believe you might be able to shoot out the signal disruptors and actually recover your drone. But in general, the drones are essentially useless after hitting a signal disruptor. So this provides a good electronic barrier, which is a nice play on the idea of the defensive mechanisms of creating, a wall of gas, a wall of electronic EMP essentially. And then this guy is able to use walls in the other sense of being able to see through them. So he creates or has a heartbeat sensor that is able to see through the walls in terms of heartbeats. So basically it's like a motion sensor that works through walls. It works something similar to like the ping sort of motion detector in Aliens. Unfortunately, it doesn't communicate the signals or anything like that to your teammates, kind of relying on you doing that yourself, which I find is a big missed opportunity in terms of the design, as there's a lot of other ways of communicating locations of enemies that actually works across your team and provides good team communication. And depending on your team, to do voice chat is very risky in terms of like design, because a lot of games just players can't do voice, like they don't have a microphone, they're not in a good situation to use a microphone, they're in a room where someone's sleeping, things like that, where depending on a microphone to increase coordination is probably not the best way. And there's a lot of missed opportunities in terms of silent communication and signaling in this game, as there's very few ways to do that other than to signal the position of an enemy and a single 3-second marker. So this provides an okay ability, but it's rarely used because it's just generally not that useful unless you need to get an idea which wall someone's coming in from. This provides a different defensive capability in terms of actually helping your people stay alive once they're penetrated or attacked. If someone is knocked down but not killed, they're able to be revived by someone just coming over them and hitting the use key, which takes a moment to do, just as like mini games like Left 4 Dead or something like that. But obviously you have to expose yourself, and in a highly tactical game it's very dangerous to expose your position, especially in a defensive situation, when trying to revive a teammate, leaving a lot of teammates dead. This provides a nice twist on that mechanic by giving you a way to remotely revive a teammate using a stim pistol. So basically you're able to shoot a revive into someone, giving you a way to do it from a distance without revealing your position. It does require line of sight, which can be just as revealing, so it's not the greatest, and I rarely see it used from the pistol perspective. Interestingly enough, I see this class actually being used, especially by myself, more often to revive himself, which is interesting that if he's down, he's able to actually revive himself rather than reviving a teammate, which gives you the ability to kind of like get back up. Unfortunately, that also runs into problems where usually if someone shoots you down, there's generally standing right there to shoot you back down again should you try and get back up. So you have to kind of time it carefully. And lastly is another play similar to the Doctor one, except for focused on the armor, which is the ability to drop a pack of armor that all your teammates can pick up and put on. The big upside to this is it gives you a big advantage in giving you extra defense because you don't have the same portable kinds of shields and things like that the attackers do, but you do have the ability to put on more armor and take more hits. The downside of this ability is that you place the armor bag down, and it depends entirely on your teammates coming up and using it. I do see a lot of games where people forget to get their armor, or they get it too late. I'm not sure. I think this is the best design decision. It's kind of thematically interesting and resembles something like from Payday, for example, where they would be able to drop those, or some other games that have done the ability to drop armor or health packs for your teammates. But overall, this is kind of the only one where you set something down for someone else to pick up, and it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, and also just leads to problems of it not being utilized. Whereas many of the other classes don't require your teammates utilizing them to actually get the full effect out of it. So this one probably could be done a lot better as something where it provides armor to your teammates without requiring them to pick it up, or maybe even your ability to walk over and put armor on them would probably be a better way to implement this. Alright, so we'll take a look at how the actual gameplay works from the single player perspective to get an idea of some of the different things you can do as the attacker. Unfortunately, you can't play as the defender in terrorist hunt mode, just the attacker, so all we can see is those things from this perspective. So I'll select Lone Wolf, which allows me to play by myself without having to do the matchmaking. And I can pick a difficulty, which generally doesn't make much of a difference, as most of the difficulties are just slight boosts to things, including friendly fire, which is interesting. And the amount of XP and stuff you get for that. So this will pick a random one of the available 3 levels at the moment for me to join into. It gives me about 10 seconds to be ready. And in this case it picked this particular level, the Consulate. Most of the levels are roughly similar in terms of having multi-story building that you're trying to penetrate. So we already covered the attackers before, and this is the general recruit one that is available from the beginning and doesn't have to be unlocked. And usually you can tell who is kind of a newbie by who has a recruit, but that's not always the case in the fact that if I select a class, another player cannot select it. But this, of course, depends on what you have unlocked. So in this case, I'll use Sledge to show how some of the wall penetration works. You see the selecting between the primary weapons, secondary weapons, and your gadget. And then you can also select where you want to spawn. In general, this is probably one of the areas they could revise. I'm not sure what testing they've done in terms of whether or not this is worthwhile. In an esports sort of environment, I can see some big reasons for having this as an option. But for the attackers, generally these locations don't matter much. They decide which way you go straight to the building at, but they don't really give you much in terms of approach differences. Like, it's really just coming at the building from a different side, which you could do from any position. So normally when you start the game, it starts in a drone phase as well as a barricade phase for the defenders. And in this case, though, since it being single player, you don't have those explicit phases. You just start right in. And so I started at this random spot since I picked no vote, which is probably what the default should be. Alright, so since I don't have an explicit drone phase, I can still take advantage of the drones in the terrorist hunt by throwing out a drone like that, and then I remote controlling it. You see from the specific drone view, it's able to jump. And most of the barricades, the wooden barricades especially, have this small gap at the bottom, which does allow you to see feet when you're like going to breach and things like that, but also allows a drone to get through. As well as they placed these interesting little gaps specifically for drones in the game to be able to sneak through. Now, the main point of this in multiplayer is to find out where everyone's kind of holding up at and where the objective is. In Terrorist Hunt, there's people on every floors and every objective, so you just want to kind of mark the people, and they will attack your drone, which is kind of cool that they can shoot out the drone. As well as the other surveillance in the game, cameras can be shot out. So in this case, I want to go around marking them without being seen. They stay marked, as you can see. In this case, they're given different classes of terrorists. They can be marked and they stay marked, but in the actual multiplayer mode, a marker is only placed very temporarily on the location you exactly saw them at, which is a big difference. Another difference is that they provide refills of ammunition in this mode, which is not provided in the multiplayer mode. So in this case, you see the line of sight really matters in terms of detecting an opponent, and you detect the opponent by holding X to scan for them, which is kind of cumbersome as a mechanic. Not so much in this mode as in the multiplayer mode where your markers are temporary and you have to keep rescanning. In this mode, since they stay scanned, it's not that big a deal, but it does make you explicitly have to search for them instead of just depending on the game to find them for you. And you can see your drone can be easily shot out. So now that I've done some initial scouting and I can kind of see where people are at, it gives me a chance to do my actual penetration part. Now I can come in directly through the front door, but what's really interesting about this game is the use of vertical space. So while there's usually 1 to 2 to 3 floors above ground, there's also a lot of times basements and things like that that provide a way to penetrate down below street level. The attackers have the advantage in that they can move around the outside of the building, whereas the defenders can only stay inside the building. They're unable to leave. This gives the attackers the ability to do rappelling, which allows them to scale floors without using the internal stairs, which is a big advantage the attackers have in surprising the defenders, although usually in a multiplayer game you need to know where the actual objective and guys are located and penetrate that particular floor. Now what's kind of nice is they generally provide ways to penetrate through ceilings. Penetrating upwards through ceilings is generally not possible for the most part, but penetrating downwards through them usually is. In this case, for example, there's a skylight, so I can actually rappel down through the skylight, giving me the ability to come in through this entire stairwell and take advantage of the vertical space. So as you can see here, for example, I get to drop on this enemy who's unable to do much because I was able to get above him out of his line of sight. Now there are cameras that can see me coming down this area, which is useful in the multiplayer scenario of this same level. But the nice thing is you can kind of flip yourself upside down, right side up, which is, you know, a fun mechanic. Being able to fight upside down for some reason is actually pretty fun. And a lot of this game is about getting the drop on your enemy either through traps as the defender or through good positioning as the attacker and breach coordination. Coordination is definitely a big factor in this game, to not being surrounded and things like that. Let's take a look at the ways you go in through the actual walls. So I can go over here and pick a surface. These kind of provide visual cues as to rappel points, which is nice. To let you know that there might be something down below that, like a window. So as the attacker here, I can try and penetrate through these different surfaces that are wooden. So the inside ones, sheetrock or drywall, things like that, are penetratable as well and are marked differently. But windows and barricades that are put up by the player are always marked with this X and are sort of wood. And now I can essentially melee attack to destroy part of the surface, which is nice. They're partial surface destruction. Allows me to create little peepholes to see in without completely exposing myself. And I can continue to attack it with via melee, or I can actually use my sledgehammer to break it entirely. I don't see anyone in here, but I would want to actually check the other window, which is nice. You can go across the entire surface here, providing a good tactical advantage. And I can switch up if I want to take this kind of point of view, although I think it's more fun to generally attack from upside down. I'm not seeing anyone here, so if I think it's safe to enter, I can actually just swing in, which is a fun way to breach wall. In this case, if I'm like, oh, I don't actually want to go in here, I can climb back out and pick a different place to enter. So let's actually say I wanted to enter in from the ground floor. I can do a rapid descent, which allows me to get down to the ground. And I can try and penetrate this through the ground. So I know there's some enemies that were in here, but I'm not sure where they're at now, as eventually the markers do fade away. So I want to take advantage of being able to see through the holes. I don't see anyone there. Now there are some outside surfaces you could penetrate with the sledgehammer or a breach charge that aren't necessarily as obvious to penetrate with a sledgehammer. So let's take, for example, I did not have the sledgehammer and I wanted to breach through a window or a wall without just knocking it out bit by bit. So let's say I want to penetrate this particular window here, or even one up here, and I wanted to do it by surprise. There's this ability to place breaching charges on the surface, move away from them, and then take advantage of the actual surprise caused. Now you can't place two at a time, but you still can coordinate with others. And this is where I find the marker system kind of useful. There's no ability to do much marking other than by pressing Z and you place this temporary marker. What I did find interesting is that it added a countdown to it, which was, I'm not sure the exact mentality of the design decision, but it does provide a way to provide a visual countdown for players. So let's say I wanted to provide a countdown letting them know when I was going to blow this charge. I can hit Z, and then when it hits 1, I hit the same key I used to place it, and blow open the wall. It provides a lot of surprise, and if coordinated well with your teammates, can make a great entry into a room to breach. And you can see here some of the reinforced walls that the defenders are able to place to make it harder for me. So these kinds of walls right here, you see, I would not be able to break through with the sledgehammer or any kind of explosive. I would have to use the thermite character to actually place a breach charge similar to what I did to actually drill through that. So that gives a way to control somewhat the entry of the counter-terrorists or the attackers. And this barbed wire also provides some as well, as it would slow my entry into the room. So I wouldn't be able to come in through the wall, and I'd be forced to choke through that door into some slow barbed wire while I could be potentially ambushed as I can't enter as fast. So let's say I was happy with that room and I wanted to go through another room. Use that sledgehammer again. Now generally a lot of the combat's going to be focused on a single floor, as most of the time there's an objective and it's usually placed on a very specific floor. So a lot of choices for the defenders is choosing which floor and room to place things on, so that way you could take advantage of the defensive possibilities of that room. Now so you can hear that the enemy's actually coordinating and hearing that I'm on the barbed wire, which is nice. The barbed wire, while it slows down, also provides an audio cue in terms of whether or not someone's coming into a room. Let's take a look at how you can use the actual ceilings in the rooms. Now generally the floors, most places are shootable through to an extent, but are not penetratable to in terms of creating a breach you can get through. The trapdoors are the exception, and I think that is meant to be a way to control the access points from the ceiling, but they are placed over objectives generally. And in this case there's no objectives in the terrorist hunt, just terrorist kill. But in general this would be over a garage room, which is one of the possible objective points. So if you knew that was an objective point, this would be a very useful entry point into that room, as the trapdoors provide a way to break through. Now I could melee attack through this, or things like that, or I could actually place a breach charge. Again, that core mechanic of focusing on surfaces comes in helpful. So I could come back here, say I was coordinating with a teammate, and that provides a lot of surprise to the enemy me coming in like that, like especially through the roof. Can you hear them talking? Now, of course, the downside is if I drop down, I can't rappel down on a surface like this. So if I drop down, I'm pretty exposed into the room. So it's a very risky thing to do. So it provides a good balance between surprise on the defenders and downside to the attackers in terms of it being exposed. Something like the riot shields usually help with something like that. So let's take a look at some ways I can kind of penetrate through the regular walls. So many of the walls that are just even surrounding doorways and stuff can be broken holes in, so you can kind of see through them, get a vantage point, kind of see if someone's coming. They also have the ability to be broken with a sledgehammer, giving me the ability to completely penetrate them. And this, of course, is one of the stairwells that would have to be used by the defenders in order to get up and down levels, which is a great place to provide some choke points and things like that, and provide some good level design. Fortunately, the levels are very similar, but they all do provide a nice setup, much the same in terms of how the mechanics are used. So in this case, you can see those markers there indicate the surface is reinforced on the other side. And this is the other side of the wall that I was pointing at earlier, giving you a way as a attacker to be able to tell that the wall is reinforced so you don't waste valuable resources trying to get through it or do anything with it. It also gives you a clue, interestingly enough, to where the defenders might be, as they're very likely, or very unlikely, rather, to reinforce areas they're not going to be in or use as choke points. So it provides a nice clue to the attackers as well as a benefit to the defenders. And I think there's some good trade-offs in things like that. In this case, I can actually take advantage of shooting through the walls as well, to try and provide some extra defense. So let's take a look at using the shields versus using just the abilities to penetrate walls or the drone ability. See how the shields affect the game. Now, a lot of times the primary weapon choice may have the choice of a small riot shield, which is just the size of this top half and doesn't protect the legs. His choice, he doesn't have a choice of weapon, but is stuck with basically his giant extendable shield and can choose between a couple different types of grenades or pistols. Which you can see there are some different stats, but unfortunately the weapons generally don't feel like they have much variety other than their clip size and fire rate and damage. So they're not as distinct as they probably could be, which is an unfortunate downside. There is customization options though, which I will show for how to customize the actual loadout of an operator to give it upgrades. Go ahead and vote no. Vote.
Eliminate all hostiles.
Now you can see I move much slower unless I sprint, in terms of being a big heavy guy. So the shield guy provides an interesting advantage in defensive capabilities. So if I hit the button here to extend my shield, now it covers my legs as well, which provides me with the ability to kind of charge in much better. Be a little more defended. Now if I go to aim down my sights, you can see I lose a lot of defensive benefit. Unfortunately, one of the dumb design decisions they made was adding suicide bombers, which can just run at you, generally aren't hurt very much, and can just end your life. So you can see an example of a very poor enemy design decision by Ubisoft. Let's take a look at how operator customizing works. Obviously, you can't customize the gadget, and the ability to choose a primary or secondary weapon comes when you're during a match. The ability to customize their loadout is more on customizing a specific kind of weapon variations. So if you go to their loadout, you can choose the default one here of these options, but it doesn't really do much by itself. However, when you go to click on one, pick this one for example, you can spend your renown to upgrade various aspects of the weapon. Whether these provide big advantages and kind of make it a little more pay-to-winish is hard to say, as they don't necessarily provide huge benefits, but they do provide some. So there are also cosmetic ones, which are kind of nice, which are oddly enough like a lot more expensive, but I think that does make them more rare, which is smart. And it's unclear yet how renown purchasing will work, if it is purchasable, things like that. So let's say, for example, we wanted to improve my ability to aim with this gun. This is the most expensive and probably the best of the scopes here. So let's say I chose a nice cheap one. Go with this one. And you can unlock it with your renown. And now it's available as a choice. You can still turn it off if you want. There's also different barrels, so like if you wanted to make it a little bit harder to be seen, there's ways to hide the muzzle flash. There's also ways to silence it, which is very expensive from the looks of it, but does greatly reduce damage, for example. So there are some trade-offs involved. And there's also ones that can kind of help with the recoil, so basically some of the different stats of the weapon can be kind of modified through that. More recoil modification, and then one that just helps with accuracy of hip fire, which I'm not sure actually does modify the accuracy or just makes it easier to shoot. So go ahead and purchase that. And you can see there are upgrades for some of the other weapons as well. You can see though something like this is not available for customization. So you can choose those things, but you can't customize them. This is probably not the greatest UI making that clear without having to actually click on it. You can see some of your statistics about your operator that you've played as, trying to give you some kind of class identity as a player, and then the video that they'll supposedly have showing how to play it, and some fake, bio stuff like Rainbow Six games are known for. Let's take a look at another attacker here. And if you go into that, the weapon there, which takes a second to load, you see that the unlocks don't carry across individual operators. Obviously, they want to give you lots of things to buy and upgrade, and that you'll probably upgrade a primary class that you're going to be playing a lot, things like that to make it, keep it interesting. Something like this character, however, is kind of interesting in that he doesn't have a primary gun choice as a weapon, and it is unable to customize his primary weapon. This leaves him with only being able to customize his pistols. So this is an example of where they kind of have a somewhat missed opportunity in terms of giving you stuff to spend on for all the characters. But it's possible they may improve this with the full release. But this is an area where like something like a skill tree could be really useful instead of just straight unlocks like, you have just this simple, you unlock a single upgrade and then you've got nothing more to spend on it, no real customization choices. There's very little downside to using these. Yeah, you lose a little bit of damage, but for example, what's the downside to using this, right? Unless the opponent can see it. So some of these are not the best in terms of giving you something to choose that's interesting, that affects the game in interesting ways, but that it is in the obvious choice. This is just kind of that sort of pay-to-win mentality grind, which is unfortunate. And of course the defenders can make upgrades as well, but you end up with the same kind of situations where some of them have gun choices and then some of them don't, and that the gadgets themselves are not really upgradable. Alright, so let's take a look at how the actual multiplayer works. There's multiplayer through Terrorist Hunt, which uses the same matchmaking that's in the basic multiplayer. The way these menus are divided up is a little bit confusing, but essentially if you click on multiplayer, it just starts matchmaking and you don't get to choose a mode. It just pretty much is like, hey, I want to play the game, let me jump in. And that's kind of a play on how a lot of the console games are now, where they just kind of try and do the matchmaking for you and not really give you many options, no server browser or anything like that. Unfortunately, this game right now lacks dedicated servers, so you're actually having to pick one of the players to be a host as well, which leads to a variety of hit detection problems and rubber banding and host migration and whatnot. So hopefully there will be dedicated servers when the game comes out. And I find this a really odd design choice for a game that is intending to be an esport, to not have good ways to select who you want on your team, to not have good ways to pick the mode or the level. I'm hoping a lot of this is beta, but really not having a dedicated server is a big problem in terms of setting that up. And maybe it's because of the fact that they have to have 5 versus 5 set up from the get-go, that they can't really do a good dedicated server setup. But you can see me getting into a match now. The matchmaking usually is a little buggier than that, but I jumped into the middle of a game that's already in progress. So my choices are constrained by what the other people have chosen. This guy obviously doesn't have much unlocked, especially with a name like Guest. So I'll go here and pick a class that will allow me to live a little bit longer. And everyone just generally bandwagons on one spot. As I said, there's not a lot of point in choosing a variety of spots.
You need to locate the biohazard container.
As I said before, the attackers start with this drone phase, during this phase, the preparation phase, the defenders are also doing their barricading. So this gives me a chance to kind of scout out where the defenders might be. Interesting how you can see each other and bump into each other. So you see someone found the hostiles already. And there, this signal jammer guy actually placed it right on mine
Good work.
and prevented my ability
Biohazard
to
container
continue.
has been located.
This provides me with really not much to do when I get to this point, which is kind of unfortunate. It would be nice if I was able to view the other player's drones or something like that, as mine are
5
kind of
seconds
disabled,
before insertion.
which is something you can do once you're dead. So this is kind of another missed opportunity in terms of giving me something to
Biohazard
do.
container and secure it.
Now that we know where the objective is, that actually makes a big difference in how we approach the entire level, which is a key part of the preparation phase stuff in terms of doing your recon, figuring out where things are at, knowing where to attack and where to approach from. So for example, now I can rappel up here. I saw movement through the window. Provides me a way to do some damage there. And as a distraction, he placed this cluster bomb charges into the room, helping clear out the room. Now this is the actual thing to secure, so it becomes an important thing to attack. So I saw attacker's gun going through there. Unfortunately, I don't have shield defense when I'm at the window. It's nice you get to see who killed you, and then you get to see a kill cam. Unfortunately, the kill cam's usually fairly inaccurate right now. But of course, it provides a good way to find out why you died. Luckily, the rest of my team was pretty good, and this one guy pretty much managed to kill everyone, and you get to watch the kill cam of him finishing the job, which is nice. Another way it's set up is you get a nice little timeline of how long people lived, when they did their kills, which is a nice way to actually really see an overview of the match, and I think it's a clever design. It's kind of boringly presented, but it's pretty helpful. So I'll pick the guy that just gives out armor, so you can see that. And he has a few different choices of weapons, which is nice. And then you have the deployable shield, which is something that you can pick up and move around. I'll show how that works. Now this matters a lot more. When we choose our defensive position, we're choosing both what floor and what room. So each room has its own kind of different ups and downs in terms of defensive advantage. So it becomes a key difference.
We need to protect the
So now during this phase, this is where you want to, first off, I'm going to place down the armor for everyone to get. Of course, I have to pick it up myself, which is kind of an odd choice. And then I can help these guys barricade this room. So I have 2 of these steel reinforcements I can place on walls that are penetratable. So it helps to make sure people can't come in as well. I can also make it even harder to come in by placing one of my little shields right here. The nice thing is these are easy to use, move around, jump over, and they're also portable in that I can re-pick them back up and move them around. Another key part is placing barricades on the actual doors. So this is really important to making sure people, let's say they try to come in through the outside area, this will make it harder for them to do that. Now these walls are all soft and easy to penetrate, so let's say I wanted to provide a vantage point here. I can now see into the room a lot easier, provide a good ambush position, which is a key part of playing a defender in this game. This makes it easy for me to spy on them.
Tell me when they're on the stairs.
I can reinforce this wall if I want to say make it harder to get through this particular area. And the only way they can get through that is with thermite. That's a good indicator they came in through this room here. Gives me an opportunity to ambush them. The explosions and sound cues you get from that are kind of nice. So now I can see them doing the thermite here, as we discussed earlier, and then a grenade. Interesting choice, they give you the ability to slow your blood loss by holding F, just to give you kind of something to do. But most of the time you get finished off like that. So you can see the usefulness of the thermite guy in that destroying that ability to block their access. You see the riot shield guys coming in, things like that. Now the cool thing is when you're dead, you get the ability to use the cameras to help your team out. So you can still use voice chat, you can still use text chat, and I can mark people if I'm able to see them on camera.
The guy outside that's down. If you peek from the bottom, you can kill him.
So in this case, I can't happen to, I just
There's
barely
a shot
can't
drone
see
in
him.
the locker room. Heads up, Puck.
So I can hear people communicating. Then I can look around outside to try and help my team out.
And there's a guy right outside. Pocket.
Doc,
I can also switch to their camera perspectives, but unfortunately I can't do any marking or anything useful other than try and yell if I see something maybe they don't.
Shoot it.
As an attacker, normally you also get the ability to use drones like this.
behind you, they're
You
gonna.
can hear they're using a shock drone,
Behind you guys.
Puck,
Ceiling,
behind.
ceiling, ceiling. Behind you, Puck.
so you can see the importance of
Fuck,
voice
behind-
communication.
Above you. Right above you.
And I just marked that to help out the team. This way I can kind of try and help find where the guys might be. The cool thing is they can actually shoot out the cameras, so let's say I spot this guy right now and he doesn't like that because he notices he's been
Prevent
spotted.
further access to
He
the
can come back around that
biohazard
corner right now
container. Blue 4 remaining.
and shoot the
Stop
camera.
the hostiles from securing the container. Protect the biohazard container. Op 4 is securing the biohazard container.
Unfortunately,
Intervene
we lost.
immediately. Blue 4 eliminated. Mission failure.
And of course we get to see how the last kill was done by the enemy. And we keep switching sides until we reach, if we reach a tie of 3 points, then we go into a match, like overtime. So right now we're at match point, for example. So if we win, it's very similar to how tennis is scored. So I'll go with this guy, which is able to provide the flashing shield. And I'll just pick no vote and let them vote. You can see everyone what classes they chose. And the cool thing is this timer, while it counts down from a high number, skips like you just saw once everyone's ready, so that it's only a 5-second countdown once everyone's ready. So you don't have to wait extra. And I think that's a smart design decision.
Find the biohazard container location.
So now we're back to the attack. The cool thing is, you know, I've played against them as defender before, I've played against them as attacker, and now I have a better idea how they play. And so I can kind of adjust accordingly. There's enough matches generally to provide a good back and forth and get a feel.
They're upstairs, upstairs.
Usually once one person finds where they're at, everyone kind of can
Yeah.
go to that one place. Fortunately, there's see like a signal jammer has a specific range. So as long as I avoid that range, there's actually ways to kind of jump over it
Insertion in 10
and kind
seconds.
of not get killed by it.
5 seconds to insertion.
Since we kind of scout out the rooms, get an idea of the layout, see which walls they've
Biohazard
reinforced and they
container
haven't.
location unknown.
Third
Find the
floor.
biohazard container.
The interesting thing is it specifically tells them if we find the location or not, so they have an idea whether or not we have an idea where the actual objective is at. Of course, we already know where they're at, so, and they also know when we spot them. So there is some two-way communication between the server
Let me place the
and the
charge.
game. So he's placing a charge here. I got lucky on that, there was a guy right there. See his team out there, which is cool.
Oh, there's a guy against the window.
Now I go in, I got my shield available. There's people shooting through the walls.
To your right.
And I can take out things like the
Guys, right there.
signal jammer.
Outstanding.
And you can see this wall is reinforced right here.
You guys have a charge? Put it through that wall right there to your left, yeah. Yeah, right there.
And now they've spotted me through the cameras. And they know what I'm doing, so I can shoot out the camera.
downstairs.
Go, go.
Unfortunately, I was not able to survive that. Interesting what they do with the audio to kind of muffle it.
Move, MZ.
Interesting choice, I guess, is you can move yourself if you don't stop blood loss. Which I guess was the main benefit to
Four
giving something
eliminated
else to
Op
do.
4.
You can see me crawling away there. Interesting that they reinforced the wall after I blew it out, if you saw that. So that is something you're able to do if it didn't completely destroy the wall. You can see the timeline where I killed one guy. And then your overall ranking connection here, which is useful. But unfortunately those are very short periods, you don't get a lot of time to evaluate that. And now we're still fighting for match point. You're going to kind of see like where they want to defend at. I'm not sure, again, there's much use in voting as someone generally chooses. It'd probably be better to just have it be random. That way the the defender or the attackers are not really able to anticipate where you're going to go anyways. I'll actually switch to the smoke guy here to show something different.
Secure the room. We need to protect the biohazard container.
So now generally they're going to try and come in through walls like this. So you want to reinforce that. Reinforce this wall.
Op 4 located the biohazard container.
Unfortunately, the signal guy wasn't able to stop the drones from finding it. And now, since this is a pretty common room to come in through, I'll place a gas charge in here.
10 seconds left. Down to 5
Oh,
seconds.
if they come in, I can kind of gas them a little bit.
Protect the biohazard container at all costs.
You can see I can kind of spy in. And if they breach in, I can take advantage of that to gas the room.
Charges are on the roof on the stairs, don't peek it.
I can also switch to the oops. So I now have a gas charge I can actually even place through there, which is kind of nice. I think that was kind of an error more than anything else, but switch to the cameras, idea where they're at, which you can do while still being alive, but it's a little risky. You can see it kind of can be a problem.
Get out of there. Get out of locker.
The beauties are in place.
So now I release the gas into the room. I'm making it difficult for them to
Pop
enter.
the charge to whoever's in A.
Throw some more gas in there, make it difficult for them to come through. I'm down pretty low on health, so chances of me surviving are pretty low. And you can see some walls are not penetrable. And the shields tend to reflect most of your bullets. So that's the class I was playing last, and I was able to blind, which he didn't actually use on me. So the kill cam you can see is a little inaccurate in terms of how it displays. So again, I can use the cameras to kind of help my teammates out. See how the marker stays in
Biohazard
place.
container. Biohazard container securing paused. Take out the hostiles.
And they're actually trying to secure the spot,
Biohazard container.
but it's
Op
contested
4
right now because we're in the room as well.
securing the biohazard container. Intervene immediately. One blue 4 remaining. Stop the hostiles from securing the container.
So I can use this to kind of try and mark everyone.
Mission failed.
You can
Blue
see
4
we lost.
neutralized.
One interesting thing they did, in addition to leveling up, is the ability to rate the match, which I think is supposed to help the matchmaking, but how do I judge this? You know, is it 5 because they were a good team, 5 because we were a good team, 1 because we lost? Obviously there's going to be some biases, and I don't know if it's going to be the most effective thing. And then after you are out of the match, you go back into the same matchmaking with the same people, which provides a good way to kind of play again. There's also a vote option on rematch to rematch with a team, but it does require a majority vote to actually continue to play against that team, which may select a different level and a different mode. So you're not really given a lot of options. You're pretty much just thrown in to start playing and see if we have a different team now, and we can see them and we'll play against them now. So I'll show another defender that has some interesting options in terms of I have the nitro cell, which is like a plantable sticky explosive, and then the barbed wire. I'll use just the nitro cell this time, and shotgun to show some variety. And we'll see how the heartbeat sensor works to try and detect the enemies that are outside the room.
Secure the room. We need to protect the biohazard.
So I'll go ahead and place a charge right here. Makes it so if they try and enter through this area, boom. So you see you can shoot at the drones and then destroy the drones. Luckily they weren't able to spot anyone before I did that. Makes a big difference. So I'm kind of reinforce this wall. You have them come in through here.
Op 4 drone located
See how it
the
notifies you
biohazard
you've been
container.
spotted?
5 seconds left.
Meaning I know the drone has seen me, so I have to kind of watch out for them.
Op 4 has located the biohazard container.
So let's see, I can barricade off this doorway. And you have unlimited of these kind of barricades, so you can kind of barricade that as much as you want. You see everyone's kind of holed up in this room for the most part. But I'll actually take advantage of going to this room since I've got my charge over on this side. And they're likely to think I'm in that other room.
Get away from the
You can
window.
see I can use the heartbeat sensor. So I can see there's people coming in there. It shows me the ring to kind of give me an indication of distance. So they're likely to be breaching through the windows. Unfortunately, it doesn't communicate this information to my team,
I damaged some of them.
but you can tell kind of where they're at. They look like they could be coming through the stairs. This gives me an idea of when I should use my charge, which is kind of nice. But again, this doesn't communicate to my team, making it sometimes relatively worthless. So they may be running around on the roof here. So they're trying to come in from that side now.
Surveying for hostiles.
Unfortunately, I can't blow my charge safely without killing my teammates, which is a big concern with explosives in this. See someone using a gun skin?
Deploying heartbeat sensor.
See the little +5 up here? They kind of give you some benefit from using your different equipment.
Nitro. Action.
Prevent further access to the biohazard container. Op 4
Unfortunately, that was an
securing
enemy
the
right there
container.
that I just backed into.
Mission failed.
So that was a good
Fully
move.
neutralized.
Show one more gadget here, the shock drone, and kind of get an idea how that works. This is for the attacker. See some different guns there. Alright, so now we kind of know the enemy's on the 3rd floor. So I'm going to take advantage of that with my shock drone to kind of mess with them when we try and breach. So I'll take a position where I know they can't shoot me. I can release my shock drone. Now I'm only given one, so if it's destroyed, you know, my gadget's kind of useless at that point. I can't use it again. And unfortunately, I also have to watch out for the signal disruptors like that are right there. I can't get past those, making it a big hazard for this particular class. Now, if they're able to penetrate and destroy that particular signal disruptor, then I'll be able to get in. Hopefully the actual explosion will destroy the signal disruptor, so now I can get in. I can mark them, and I can go up and tase them. Which is a cool way to screw with them. Unfortunately, you know, my drone is dead, but that was a good way to distract them while I found the objective and provided some
Securing the
good
container once the threat is neutralized.
threat.
Secure the biohazard container.
He does. Just real quickly show how the barbed wire works in terms of placing it. Unfortunately, kind of the feedback on placing things is not the greatest. But now I have a way to slow them down as they come in, especially if we barricade it down as well. A room that really takes advantage of all the different barricades to try and make it difficult for them to get in.
My toxic blade.
And that if they do, can kind of gas it up a little bit.
Detonating nitro.
Take advantage of the shield here. Oh, I forgot to get my armor.
Down target.
And you can kind of see how the whole booby trap sort of concept works out with choke points and whatnot.
Target detected.
So that's kind of an overview of the different mechanics and gameplay of Rainbow Six Siege, which again is still in beta and still may have some changes to come. But overall, I think it's kind of an interesting game. It's a bit limited right now, and unfortunately the combat is really kind of the least interesting part, whereas all the different ways to penetrate the surfaces, to protect yourself and defend the area and booby trap it, kind of actually make for a much more interesting game than the run and gun combat. So hopefully people that like tactical games will be able to take it to this and make it more interesting in terms of how all these different things factor into the combat, so that it's not just first person to get in a room and get off a shot is the one to win. This does require a lot of coordination and teamwork. So some interesting mechanics, and I would like to see more games that take advantage of wall destruction, or at least the ability to do something similar to penetrate both horizontal walls, and maybe playing a bit more on the vertical space. So hopefully there'll be maybe a high rise or something in a future scenario that allows a lot more vertical play to make it for more of an interesting kind of surround the enemy sort of thing. as opposed to just being simple choke points and gunning. So there we go. Hopefully that was informative to you. Let me know what you think.